resident of Collinwood for YouTube, joined by my buddy Gordon. We're here to talk Angelique and does Angelique have children? And Gordon had a very interesting theory on Twitter. You want to explain that, Gordon?
Well, it was, if I can be honest, it was a joke. But Jewel had asked, does Angelique have children? And I said, yes, 2 words, Victoria Winters.
You know what? You know what's weird to me about the whole Angelique kids thing? And because we can't just include Angelique in this conversation, we have to include Judah Zachary in this. And what's really scary to me with that is even if you go by our buddy Patrick McRae's theory, and again, it could be, could the ghost of Quentin just be Judah Zachary? Sure. So if you go look at that and look at 1995 with Gerard Stiles, who's actually Judah Zachary, Judah Zachary hates kids. From everything I've seen, he just seems to have it out for children, especially if they have the last name Collins. But I sort of wondered, because there's a really interesting interaction with Angelique when she thinks Quentin is Judah. She takes the voodoo doll and starts jamming the pins a bit. And Barnabas is like, no, it's not Quentin. And there's another moment where she goes, okay, whoever, if it really is Judah Zachary, and she gets Gerard Stiles. Now, when that Judah Zachary is in Gerard Stiles' body, but when this happens, he doesn't kill her. He says, I'm gonna make you suffer. You're gonna watch Barnabas die. And it's like, I always get the sense that the curse that happens with Angelique when she's cursed as a witch, I always got the sense, and I'm not saying this is in there because it's not, they don't say this, and I want to make that very clear. I always got the sense that Judah took the ability for her to have kids away from her. Because what's the worst punishment you can give a woman? Not necessarily just immortality, but immortality with a incentive price tag. Oh, I know. I'm not going to let you have children.
See, I can't see that for a couple of reasons. Part of it is I think it's a little too reductive of a punishment. Like, the worst thing you can do, especially since at the time the show was written, there was the changing of attitudes about women being only good for being mothers, being housewives, etc.
Right.
I think from a plot standpoint as well, I think having Judah Zachary remove her ability to have kids gives him a little too much power.
Right.
And it's also something that he tends to think through. I mean, Judah Zachary is very much impulsive, hot-headed. I mean, he tends to lose his head in more ways than one.
Right.
I mean, he's kind of like the so I can't see him punishing Angelique like that. Right. And I also think, too, his trial and everything went so quickly, when we would have had the time to actually execute the magic.
Well, remember at the trial, he curses her right there. So I'm sort of wondering, okay, we always hear about, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, here's Judah Zachary, who has this immense power. Right. And he casts a spell, it happens. There's no if, ands, or what's about it. That's one thing I've come to learn with Judah Zachary's powers. Now, he curses her right at the trial. So I'll go off that, because that's the only opportunity he would have had. Mm-hmm. So with that curse, is there an incentive behind it? So here's a great example. Well, not a great example. When Barnabas is cursed, he's cursed not just as a vampire. If anybody loves Barnabas, they die. And pretty much that's what happens. Everybody dies. His mother, his sister, his friend Nathan Forbes. I know he turns out to be a jerk, but he still gets killed. But so is there now again, the big difference would be, and I'll admit to this, Judah doesn't say the incentive. Angelique is sort of saying the incentive during when she curses Barnabas, she's saying the incentive. My thing of it is, does Judah have to say the incentive, or is it just something Angelique knows can't happen? Because, and again, the only real thing I have of this is not necessarily Angelique. It's how much Judah seems to hate kids.
I think that when you look at Dark Shadows, the way curses work is that they're very specific.
Right.
It's not you. With Angelique and Barnabas, it was you won't rest, you won't love. Anybody who loves you will die. Right. And the vampirism is kind of the way he never rests because he's a vampire. But the dream curse is very specific. All the curses are very specifically worded. Judah Zachary's curse is more towards the Collins family, and I don't think at that point Zachary would have thought you can't have kids. Right. He would have wanted Miranda Duval to die. Yeah. He wouldn't. It's like if I curse you, it doesn't matter what I intend. If I'm in the Dark Shadows universe and I say I curse you to be locked in a room with David Lee Roth and Patrick McRae and not able to move, that's the curse. It's right. Maybe I might intend for you to only be able to eat Burger King or Arby's, but I'm very specific. You're in that room, you're with David Lee Roth and with Patrick McRae, and I'm sure Patrick is watching this thinking, oh God, please, Gordon, no, back, no, stop. So love you, Patrick.
Oh my gosh. It's most strange to me because, okay, we know Angelique and Barnabas have this relationship in Martinique. Mm-hmm. We know Angelique has a relationship with Sky Rumson. So, but we never see Angelique with kids at all. So that's the only other thing I have is like, okay, during that, when he puts this curse of witchcraft on her, this basically making her immortal, if you will, is there something else he puts on her? Does he put something else on her without saying it, but she sort of knows about it? Again, because she herself doesn't say, oh yeah, hey, I have this kid around. She doesn't address having children. And I get maybe that wasn't the intent of the character. That could just be a writing thing. But because, again, Judah Zachary isn't mentioned until, to be fair, isn't mentioned until way later, right? But it's, when I think about that and I think about the character of Zachary himself, I can't, for him to punish somebody, because his punishments, they're very cruel. And he himself is very cruel.
Right.
I mean, I agree with you. He is a hothead, but he's also a hothead who has one of the most cruelest ways of punishing people. I mean, when he's Gerard Stiles, when he's in Gerard's body, there's a moment where where Daphne is with the kids and she says, Gerard, what are you doing? And she doesn't know it's Judah Zachary, but he punishes her and those kids right then and there. And it's just like, my God, how cruel can you be? And that's what I mean. Like, his cruelty knows no bounds. That's why I say I could see him being that cruel toward taking the ability of that away from her. Again, am I saying he did? No. But because again, it's weird. But go on. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
Well, I was about to say we don't have any proof that Angelique had kids at all within
Right.
Dark Shadows.
Right.
Um, Even if you look at her timeline, you take all the different flashbacks. Okay, 1740, the 1840 actually is the you see where in that time frame she's spending her time going to Barnabas's coffin and going deeder 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 I won I won.
Right.
Um,
Right.
1897 she's starting to develop feelings for Quentin, works against Patofi. Then you get into 1968 where she's Cassandra, she's marrying Roger, she's getting into all sorts of wacky shenanigans,
Right.
and then she gets involved with Sky Rumson. I don't see at any point whether you see her as I think after 1840 when she's shot, that might be when she becomes immortal. Because don't forget, Miranda Duvall is not Angelique. She is a previous incarnation of Angelique.
Right.
So you can't really judge that person by Angelique standards. My personal theory is that Angelique, once she dies in 1840, that's when because she's practicing witchcraft, she then becomes kind of a different kind of human being, an immortal. And I think she's so wrapped up in Barnabas and everything else. I don't think she's thinking, you know what I need? I need a couple of kids to run around the house. And plus, can you imagine Angelique as a mom? I mean, this is a woman who killed Barnabas's younger sister. That's
Right.
not something that's not mother material. Now, if you want to argue Josette, sure, whatever. She probably did. Maybe Barnabas was husband number two. We don't know. But
Right.
Angelique, no, I cannot see her as mother material, and I think it's kind of a little limiting to kind of see it as well. Maybe Angelique lost her ability to have kids. I don't think she really cares. I mean, look at the dudes in her life. She's fixated on Barnabas.
Yeah.
Okay, she develops the hots for Quentin, who's kind of a hothead of his own. Um, Sky Rumson, who's the most boring man on the planet. And Nicholas Blair, where I think they're more like annoying coworkers than they are. They're more frenemies than they are.
Right.
But I do think that part of the issue with Angelique and kids, I think it shows a kind of it limits her character because she's a character with a lot of initiative and a lot of um, autonomy, and I think wondering whether she had. I think the issue of having kids now it maybe post Leviathan if the writers had said, okay, well she's away from Sky Rumson, she comes back and has babies with Barnabas. I could deal with that, but I think it's kind of hard because we don't quite know what kind of being she is.
Right.
We know that for at least 50 years she was a human who aged very, very slowly, but we don't see anything that would suggest that she's capable of having kids, much less having the desire or even the room to have kids.
Right. I think that again, I do agree with you with a lot of that because here's my thing too with her and with her and Sky, with her with that, it was all about the money. She loved the money. Like you, you could tell Angelique enjoyed the easy living for once.
But I think it was also like, think of it this way. She was tired of the Collins family.
Yeah,
Sky Rumson is low drama.
yeah,
Of course, he's also a Leviathan agent, but she didn't know that. And I think there's a key. I think Angelique, she was always fixated on Barnabas, but I think for her it was less about just getting someone to love her back. And I
Right.
think with Rumson, it was less about love and easy life and more just comfort. He's boring. He's bland. He's he's a Velveeta sandwich on white bread with Miracle Whip.
Right.
Okay, Sky Rumson is nobody. The character is just kind of flat. I mean, especially when Angelique, we meet her, she's like, yeah, she's living as a maid, as Josette's sister, but this is a woman with fire in her in more ways than one. And she's clever and scheming, and yes, she's evil. She
Yeah.
starts evil, but I think we see her warm up. And maybe you could argue that Leviathan era Angelique, I could see doing a storyline where she's like, I don't have a husband. I'm tired of using my powers, but I kind of want to move into a more matronly, I want to move in a different direction. But I don't really see Angelique as a I think Angelique saw that my personal theory with Angelique is that I think she and Barnabas back in the 1790s had, yes, there's a physical component, but there's also an emotional affair.
Yes.
Because even one night of pure fun is probably not going to get you that infatuated. And
Right.
because Angelique seems to act as if not just, oh, hey, Barnabas is one hot piece, and I apologize for the profanity. I think she sees it as this is a guy who's wonderful, and if you take the um, kind of retcon in Angelique's Descent, the first Dark Shadows novel by Laura Parker, that she's actually uh, Andre Dupre's daughter, a
Yeah.
legitimate daughter. That makes a lot more sense because she's not just saying, okay, I want this guy because he represents wealth. I should be that, not Josette.
Right.
Like so, but I don't really see her motivation as. Um, but I do see that there might have been, and let's face it, Barnabas's history with women isn't exactly pure. But I think
Right.
there's a certain amount of, I think she got played a little bit in the 1790s.
Here's my theory of what happened on Martinique with Angelique and Barnabas. I think Barnabas was traveling the world. He was very young, we'll say teenager, just for time frame. And here's this beautiful island girl, and he wants to impress her, and he does everything to try to impress her. He doesn't necessarily use the Collins name. He does sort of the island whatever the island rituals of Martinique were at that time. He
Right.
does them with her, and that's how he impresses her. And they make love, not just once either. They make love probably several times. And so when that happens, here's this young woman who is very much infatuated with this man who came to her island, wooed her, impressed her. She's in love. And she never forgets it. And I agree with you. I don't think Barnabas ever really forgot her, but time does funny things though too.
Right.
That, you know what I mean? Where when you move on from someone to the degree of, you know what, that was a nice time in my life, but that time has passed. It's over with. And then you meet other people, and well, the other people was Josette. But I think that's what happened in Martinique with Barnabas and Angelique. Then when Angelique's working for the Dupreys, here she gets to see Barnabas again, and she never forgot that time in Martinique at all. It was
Right.
her to sort of. There's a movie called Only Yesterday, where by Studio Ghibli, where this adult girl is reliving her childhood like it only happened yesterday. Like everything that she's remembering feels like it only happened just yesterday, when it really didn't. But that's how I view how Angelique is sort of her viewing her and Barnabas. To her, everything just happened well only yesterday, but it didn't. but that's how to her, time has stood still for her because she loves him, and he's over here wanting to marry Josette, and her, it's like, no, you need to want to marry me because she's in love with him. I mean, here's a woman who goes out of her way to make sure his ass doesn't die in a duel because she knows Barnabas with a gun, this ain't going to end well.
Well, I also think, too, when you look at the fact that she's presented as being part of the Dupre household as one of the servants.
Right.
She knows the dirty laundry of the Dupre family, and she knows that on some level, the marriage to Josette is a business move.
Yep.
And that, if I remember, Andre Dupre was kind of like, okay, the Collins were more desperate about this marriage than the Dupres were.
Yeah. Right, and here's to back up Gordon's point too. You want to talk about how desperate the Collins really are with marriage during the 1795 arc. Because at this time Joshua feels, hey, this marriage with Barnabas and Josette, it's great, it's going to happen. He's trying to get his brother Jeremiah to marry Millicent, and it's you can marry Millicent, and Jeremiah's like, I don't want to get married. No.
Well, the Collins family is really weird in 1790 because it's like Jeremiah is Joshua's brother.
Yep.
But he's more like a brother to Barnabas. Whereas I think in the 1991 series, Jeremiah is Barnabas's brother, which makes sense. And you would think that if you're going to marry someone to Josette, you want to marry Jeremiah because he would be theoretically, and I think it's probably due to, at the time, sons were considered more direct lineage than brothers. But I do think it does seem like the dynamics of that family, I mean, the 1960s Collins family is perfectly normal compared to 1790s. And compared to 1840, it's like 1840 is like the Addams family on acid, because you've got Gabriel, you've got Flora, you've got, that whole Edith, who's like basically she's just there because she's drunk. You've got Quentin, who's busy in his basement doing magic stuff. It's just, the pre-20th century Collins family, not the healthiest.
Right. And to be fair to Jeremiah Collins, we hear in 1897 that he was married to Laura. We hear a backstory where when Barnabas was a kid, Jeremiah and Laura had a relationship.
Right.
So that's how the ghost of Josette knows. In the beginning episodes, when the ghost of Josette comes out of her portrait to sort of somewhat, confront Laura, she's standing in the cottage, and Matthew Morgan's cottage, and she's reaching out to David. And this is where the Phoenix says, no, Josette, he's mine. It's like, well, wait a minute. She knows Josette. How? We get that answer in 1897.
Right.
And because of Jeremiah, this is why Jeremiah doesn't really want to marry in 1795, because he's already been down the marriage rabbit hole and he didn't really care for it then. So, and he doesn't really want to go through it now. It literally takes a spell of Angelique's doing between him and Josette to get them hitched, So you want to talk about arranged marriage? Yeah, a witch arranged your marriage. Congratulations, kids.
And see, the thing is, I think Barnabas should have just forgotten about Josette and went to Angelique, because Angelique, you've got someone who practices magic. She's passionate. For Barnabas, she could have been a bad girl, non-committal. Help him with his career, just a little.
Right.
There you go.
And the thing of it is, too, now, here's a question I have for you. When Angelique leaves 1897, because we know she's pulled out of hell by Quentin and Evan Hanley, And Quentin's like, oh, we didn't want any trouble. And she's like, well, you shouldn't have summoned me. um, well, when she leaves 1897, when the arc's wrapping up, she's just gone. She's not there anymore. Now, so when she leaves 1897, does Diablo, this is my question to you, does Diablos instantly, as her reward, put her with Sky, or no? What do you think on that?
I think I don't know if he would put her in as a reward. She probably told Diablos, like, look, um, I want nothing to do with this. Like she basically just she quiet quit, to use modern language. She's like, okay, yeah, I'll do. Yeah, here's a spell. Okay, yeah, okay. Nicholas wants cream in his coffee. Fine, I'll go get some creamer from Walmart. I don't think Sky Rumson's her reward,
Right.
because I think Diablos could do better than Sky Rumson, because it's like, I could see Diablos going, okay. He'd say, hey, you want Quentin? And I can't see Angelique going, okay, you've got your choice, Angelique. You've got Quentin Collins, Sky Rumson, or this other millionaire on the West Coast. Who does she choose? Sky Rumson. She wants boring. She wants dull. So I could see Diablos making the offer, but not Sky Rumson. I think there's something more going on there.
You know what would have really been cool is if they would have found a way to get Mitchell Ryan to come back to be Burke Devlin, and she goes to South Africa and meets Burke Devlin.
Actually, more exciting if she were married to Burke Devlin during the Leviathan thing. Except he's not a Leviathan agent. He's like, okay, you know, he's basically getting on Roger saying, hey, look, dude, this stuff's going on here, and Roger's like, oh well, I think you're David's father, and Burke Devlin is just like, Mitchell Ryan is Burke Devlin. I think that would improve the 1970 Leviathan storyline. That's the one thing I think would improve it.
I think too that there's a lot of things that go on during the Leviathan arc too, where first their one weakness is a werewolf. Well, that gets changed. Then they have, well, a ghost is their weakness. Well, no, the supernatural's their weakness. It's like, can you pick one weakness and stick with it? You can't, like, I think once they did that, that's where they over convoluted things with it. Because something Patrick and I had talked about, and I said this to Patrick, I said, the Leviathan people, the Leviathan arc, whatever you want to call them, this is Dark Shadow's biggest, boldest concept to pull off.
Right.
And it really, I mean, no offense to Judah Zachary, no offense to 1897, an entire race of people that aren't necessarily human is a big, bold concept, especially when you're pulling from Lovecraft, right? So they take that and they start off, I think they start off very well, in my opinion. But then once you get into, okay, now how do you get rid of these things? Well, okay, they say the werewolf. Every time I go back through the Leviathan arc, and I'm paying very close attention to Chris Jennings. And I always get the interpretation that I think Jennings was supposed to learn how to control the werewolf, not control the changing of it, but to somehow control the werewolf, sort of like how Bruce Banner controlled the Hulk to a degree. I'm not sure if that's where they were going, and I'm not saying they were going there, but I always get that sort of sense that that's what they were wanting to perhaps do.
It does happen that on TV productions, you get changes that you don't expect due to hidden circumstances, like Commander Sinclair on Babylon 5. The actor was having mental health issues. So they decided, and Straczynski, and I'm sure Patrick, if he were here, could talk more to that, but he had trapdoors for his characters where if something had to happen, he could write them out. So Sinclair was written out. but John Sheridan was written in so that it looked like, oh, he had intended to do that when it was simply just through the happenstance. It wasn't through anything that was basically, it wasn't deliberate. It was a very calculated, like, here's the escape plan. So I think with that might be what had happened, is that something happened where Don Briscoe wasn't as available, or they realized, hey, look, this is going on too long, or they kind of had to course correct. And I think with a storyline like the Leviathans, course correcting, you have to do it at the right point. Otherwise, your story just goes off the rails.
Right. I think too, like them sort of adding. I do. Again, I know Victoria Winters was a baby face and she wanted to come back as a heel. I think if they would have let her do that in this arc, it would have worked. But they don't, and then instead they come up with this, Jeb Hawks pushed Victoria Winters off with his hill. It's like, oh, okay. But what do you think that, like you were talking about Angelique when she comes back to 1840. I love what you said, neener. I would have loved to see Angelique in the 80s. If Barnabas would have still been chained up, come in the 80s, like start doing the moonwalk around Barnabas' coffin.
I would have loved to seen her, like, open the coffin at some point and go, hey, Barnabas, I'm married to Sky Rumson. How you like me now? Right. Which is not something to brag about. And it's funny too, because it's without. I think sometimes when you look at, the character of Angelique, you kind of see that for someone who has a lot of power and a lot of ability and an intelligence, she makes some really kind of very questionable decisions. Like the whole, like deciding to kill, to use her powers to kill Barnabas' sister.
Right.
Like that's not even. And I understand that when you're infatuated with someone, your brain chemistry goes wonky. So, what seems reasonable just goes right out the window. But I think that when you consider that, okay, she decided. She ends up in 1968. She ends up becoming. She's turned into a vampire because I forget what she did, but it was just kind of like Nicholas Burrow's like, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't deal with this anymore.
Well, there's a lot that she does. The biggest mistake she makes, Nicholas basically puts her on the clock to complete this dream curse sequence. But by this time that he's putting her on this clock, that hey, you have so much time before you could pull this off. Nicholas has discovered Adam. He's wanting to learn how they brought Adam to life and stuff, and he has a vested interest in Adam. Well, here's Angelique / Cassandra. She finds Adam. She learns the fact that, hey, if Adam dies, Barnabas will become the vampire god. This is what's kept Barnabas from becoming the vampire. This is why the dream curse didn't work. And Nicholas has her on the clock to get it to work. Well, okay, she's discovered why it didn't. She gets the axe, which I love this scene. And Nicholas is in the corner raising his eyebrow like, what you doing? He's like, what do you think you're doing? And well, if I kill him, it'll cause Barnabas to become a vampire again. And he has no interest in that anymore. And he basically puts her under spell. He goes, you will age until you wither away and die. But if you could convince Barnabas to love you, you won't. And she tries to go to Barnabas. You can see she's aging. And she tries to convince him, but like, please love me, please. And he's like, after everything you've done to me, like, are you crazy?
Yeah, it's kind of like, at some point, I know why they had her keep pining after Barnabas, because I think with the Leviathan storyline, the writers just said, you know what, this is played out. Let's just make her, let's just give her a boring husband. We'll bring her in with the promise of, okay, she'll, okay, we could use her as our escape hatch, but yeah, it's like she makes some really questionable decisions.
You know, it would have been really cool to see, instead of giving her Sky Rumson, who's the most boring husband on the planet, hell in the solar system. Um, why not put her in Las Vegas and make her a casino manager? Just a suggestion.
Yeah, but I don't think the writers were thinking that at the time. Yeah, I think they were like, okay, we got to keep it on set. I'm sure
Yeah.
Dan Curtis would have been like, Vegas, are you kidding me? Well, we're a soap opera. We don't have the budget. And then he'd mess up his golf game and then go yell at George DeCenzo or something. I don't know.
I know I'm having a little too much fun, but I think the fact that they give her Sky Rumson is interesting. Again, because they do give her, like you said, they give her a rich man who's boring. And she does seem to be, for what it's worth, enjoying herself with Sky. She seems when she married Barnabas, like you could tell she was happy, right? Well, after that, after the whole stuff came out, and he shoots her and she curses him. It just became miserable for her. The next time we see Angelique where she's truly just happy is when she's with Sky. I mean, she's somewhat happy in 1897 when she's trying to help Barnabas, but it feels like more like a job for her than anything else. But when we see her with Sky, it's like, hey, she seems happy that she doesn't have to deal with the drama that is constantly the Collins family.
Yeah, and that's kind of I think this is where she's realizing, like, hey, there's more to life than just this Barnabas guy and his kooky descendants and relations. I mean, I think one of the things the writers did was to give her a little bit more autonomy, and then in parallel time, she's not the supernatural. She's just evil. She's immortal but evil.
Yeah.
And I think her character, it's something that I think doesn't get expressed in other iterations of Dark Shadows. If you excuse me, I need to go. For everyone watching, I need to go blow my nose. So
Okay.
keep yourself entertained. I'll be, go ahead, Joel. We'll catch up. Give me 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll talk. So with Angelique, you have this very interesting situation that when she marries Sky and she's having the time of her life with him, she's enjoying all this. When Julia Hoffman fought, because the reason they sort of meet back up, that Barnabas and Angelique meet back up, is because Julia Hoffman is looking for portraits painted by Charles Delaware Tate. Well, one of those portraits they track down is owned by is owned by somebody named Rumson and Sky Rumson, and Julia Hoffman goes to where he lives, and she sees the portrait of who else? Well, Angelique. That's his wife, and Julia's like, oh shoot. And it's really interesting how the writers really played that out. I liked that they did that because it gives purpose for Angelique to now be wrapped up in the storyline, because you weren't, for me anyway, and I'll say that I wasn't expecting Angelique to be a part of the Leviathan storyline. And then here they introduce Sky Rumson, and then we find out Sky is married to Angelique, which is really, really interesting. I think that's one of the most interesting parts of it, where when Hoffman sees the portrait and it's like, okay, that's his wife. Angelique is his wife. And she's very happy, and she once Sky walks out of the room, she talks to Julia. So again, really, really great setup by the writers doing that and getting Angelique involved in that storyline in the Leviathan arc. But welcome back, Gordon.
Yay.
I was just explaining how Angelique gets sort of wrapped up in the Leviathan storyline of where when she's married to Sky, Julia Hoffman is looking for portraits painted by Charles Delaware Tate.
Right.
And so she finds out that somebody owns the portrait, and it's Sky. She goes to Sky Rumson's estate, meets him, and he says, "Well, my wife, this is her portrait, that my Angelique." And Julie's like, "You gotta be kidding me."
Yeah, you'd figure that Angelique would like create a different name. It's like, this is my wife Lisa, or this is my wife Amelia. And Angelique comes in, and that way she's got, then the conversation with Julia becomes, oh yeah, I'm Angelique, but I gave up with that life now. Not just, like Angelique is such a distinctive name for someone who's trying to like hide in the shadows. Probably not the best decision.
This would have been the perfect time to reveal her real name. Like, this would have been the perfect time for her to use her original name in the marriage,
Right. Say, yeah, my lovely wife Miranda.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that name from? None of your damn business, Hoffman. Why don't you go bug Stokes and Barnabas, and you're not welcome here. Goodbye. No, I don't want any Tupperware. So long.
No, I don't want to help you. Leave me alone. Right? It's just you sort of feel sorry for her that she's about to be pulled into this fray. You really do. Even though she's done a lot of evil stuff at this point, you can see that she's happy, right? So, is there anything you want to add, Gordon?
No, just that Angelique is the character that really got me involved in Dark Shadows. That I love the fact that she has intelligence. I also, I will say, because I have two friends who do this, but she's also, I think she ignited an interest in women in fire. So I'm just going to leave that there. Leave your leave your judgment in the comments. But I know I've been a little bit stuffy and I'm fighting off a bit of a cold, but yeah. So I know I'm not as entertaining as Patrick or some of your other guests, but
you're very entertaining. You stop that.
Okay.
Stop. But is there anything you want to plug? Because I am going to leave a link to your Amazon page.
Okay. Well, let's see. I've got books out. I've got nothing coming up, but go ahead, buy my stuff, read it. That's pretty much it. I'm, like I said, I've fighting off a bit of a cold, so I'm really grateful to be here. And I'm sorry, like I said, I'm sorry I'm not my usual overt self. I blame Patrick. It is Patrick's. Patrick, look at me. Your fault. It is your fault, dude.
It's his fault that his call did not connect to yours. Right. Oh my God. But Gordon, buddy, I hope you feel better soon. Get well, and God bless you. Take care, brother.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Gordon. Bye-bye.
Bye.